Awesome. Hey everyone, the Thriving Marriage Tribe. I hope you are having a fantastic evening wherever you are. I literally just got done having dinner. I was making steak with this great salsa and some jalapeno juice squirted in my eye. So that was really fun, right? So if my eye looks like it's on fire, that's because it is. But we are here, we are live, and I am ready to share some things with you guys. You told me in a poll that communication was the number one topic for the week. So here I am to share with you this hot topic. I'm going to kind of wait for some people to jump on. It usually takes a couple seconds for people to join, but as you're joining, go ahead and let me know that you're on. Say hi. Tell me how you're doing tonight. And then again, if you have any questions about this, if this message is resonating with you, go ahead and leave me a comment. Let me know. So communication 101. Let's just dive right in. Like I said, this is going to, well, I didn't say this actually, so let me say this. We're going to do an kind of a high overview of some important principles of communication, but to really get into the depth of solid communication, we have to understand what your specific situation is in your relationship. So just know that when I give this high overview of how to have effective communication in your relationship, some of the things may apply to you, some of them may not. And if you're struggling to understand any of them, just kind of compartmentalize it. And Mark and I would be happy to explain it further to you if you need clarification on anything shared tonight. So, okay, I see a couple people on. Hi, how's it going? Happy evening. That's a word, right? Happy evening. I just got done with dinner, so I have my 6 children downstairs. You may hear them in the background as my dear husband is tending to them so I can serve you tonight. So yeah, go ahead and let me know where you're at tonight and what I can help you with the most. So in communication, we all understand that some people say there is no communication in my marriage. And I just want to clarify that. There is always communication happening. It's just whether it's effective or ineffective, whether it is progressive or it is destructive. The only time that there is absolutely no communication is literally if like you aren't talking to them, seeing them, smelling them, they weren't in the vicinity with you, you have no phone conversations with them ever. Like you can't talk to them by email. Okay, that's the only time that there is no communication. So when we hear that there is no communication in a relationship, what we really are hearing is that there's not effective communication. Your communication might be more like arguments, or that like you try to open up and the other person just like puts up a wall around you. You can't get them to share or be vulnerable with you, right? There's all different kinds of reasons why communication is not effective. So in the chat with me while we're on here live, if you want to go ahead and let me know what types of communication you're struggling with, then I'd be happy to address those. So the first point that I want to make is a beautiful thing that I learned from Mark. He is incredible. He's been doing this for over 10 years. And this is the way that he coaches clients on this. So there's a difference between what was heard versus what was said versus what was meant. I'm going to give an example about this. So we all have different, even the same word can mean very different things to two people, right? So what was heard, right, versus what the person said versus what they actually meant by that. Now this gets all kinds of crazy and like fun and not fun. When we have gender differences, we have communication differences, we were all raised with different backgrounds. So I'm going to give an example of this to kind of break it down and make it really real for you guys. So my husband and I have been married for 11 years. And several years into our marriage, I noticed that he was starting to get bothered every time I asked him if he could help me with something. And I didn't understand why. Okay, so we're going to get to this idea of what was said versus what was heard versus what was meant. And I finally got to the point where we had to have a conversation about it, right? I was like, okay, I feel like when I ask you if you could help me with something, that you feel like I get like kind of a bristled response. Am I asking too much from you? Or like, let me know, like, what's going on here? I've got this weird tension from you and I'm not really sure why. It kind of been developing, like I said, for a couple years. And so come to find out, we got to the bottom of this, and it was interesting because those words, can you help me do the dishes, or can you help me with the kids tonight, had a very different meaning to him than it did to me. When I said, can you help me with that? I meant, can he go and do it? Can he go do it? For him, when he heard that, will you help me with this? He thought that that meant we would do it together and he would be helping me perform the task, right? So I would be doing the task with him. So when I would say, will you help me with the dishes? And he would say, yes. Then I would go and leave and like take care of the boys, go give them a bath or something. And he was down there doing the dishes like, wait, you said like that you wanted to help, right? You wanted me to help you. And he felt like I was bailing on him every single time that I asked him to do something. And over time, this complete disconnect, right? These two very different ideas about what we had, about what that phrase meant, created tension in our relationship to the point where he didn't want to help me anymore. And then I was feeling like, oh man, did I do something wrong? I started looking at myself, like thinking I wasn't like being a good wife or something. I mean, it was a really, really small, simple thing. And this is just a really simple example. Thanks, Bonnie. Nice to see you. Yeah, thank you. This is a really simple example of the way that simple words and simple ideas, when we don't understand each other correctly, can create really, really wide chasms. And that's why productive, effective communication is so essential. So now I realized that instead of saying, will you help me do the dishes? I say, will you help me by doing the dishes? And just that one little difference of a word to him lets him know, I want you to do this and I'm not going to be part of it. I want you to do this for me, okay? And we laugh about that now because it was such a simple thing. It was just really a different idea. So he heard something, he interpreted it that we were going to do it together, but what I meant was that he was going to do it and I was going to go do something else. So that's just a simple example about how like these different ideas we have about words or phrases can really lead to some really big miscommunications in a relationship. So I'm sure you've experienced things like that yourself. And being able to work through those things, understand that when I say this, I mean this, is really, really important. Now, I'm not gonna harp too hard on us women, but I do want to point out something. Oftentimes in our communication, we expect the man to understand us and we want him to figure out what we need without us directly telling him that. And men get deeply frustrated by this because they don't understand the game. We want to know that he loves me. And so, oh, wouldn't it be, like, this is just an example. Wouldn't it be nice if we could go to the lake this weekend? Wouldn't that be nice? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then the weekend comes and you don't go to the lake. And then the woman feels like her man doesn't understand her or doesn't appreciate her, doesn't care about her needs. When really to him, he didn't know that that was a demand to go to the lake. Okay. We speak a little bit in code. Not all of us. That's a generalization. I know. So if that's not you, then great. But often women, and I used to do this too, ad nauseum, right? would play the game to kind of test things, to see, okay, if he really loves me, he'll figure out the code on this and he'll do this thing for me, or he'll make this happen, or he'll make me feel this way, right? The do I look fat, right? That's a stereotypical question, right? Do I look fat? When really we're kind of fishing for a compliment. So we have to be careful about that kind of language. And we need to be really, the best kind of communication is really direct, and it is said in a respectful tone and saying, this is what I would like, and then wait to hear back what their feedback is. Okay, I got some things okay, Melissa says, so true, been there, awesome. And then Wendy, what are your plans for the weekend? I ask so we can plan time together and get individual items done. He loses it. Okay. What do you mean by he loses it? Maybe you could fill me in a little bit more on that question. Yeah, so you're trying to plan time together and get individual items done. What do you mean by he loses it? Go ahead and put that in the chat and then I can get back to that one. So what we need to do is make sure that what we mean is what is really coming across. Oftentimes we do the dodge game too, men and women. This one applies to both. And again, it's a generalization, but I know you know this one. So they'll say, how are you doing? Are you okay? Oh, I'm fine. I'm great. I'm great. Right? So what you said is very different than what you meant. Okay. What you meant was, I'm not great. I'm falling apart inside, but I'm just too afraid to tell you, or whatever it really is. Right? So when we're communicating with each other, direct and respectful is always going to get you better results. because then you're going to understand what each other means, and you're not going to get into that vicious cycle of playing a game back and forth trying to interpret what each other are meaning, because that just leaves the gap wide open for all kinds of miscommunication and misunderstanding. So if you're with me on that, hey Mariah, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that as well. Now, there are also some things that kind of, we call them filters, that destroy what is understood in a conversation. So I'm going to talk about 5 of these different filters. The first one is distractions. Okay, if we're distracted, then that really filters in what we're actually getting. You know, when you've been talking to someone and they're on their phone or, watching TV or, trying to multitask, and they're like, yeah, okay. And they're not paying any attention. They're not getting what you mean. And you do the same thing when you do that to someone else. So distractions definitely filter out what is actually wanting or needing to be communicated. So when you have important discussions with your spouse, it is very essential that you do this in a distraction-free environment as possible, and make sure that you're both, attentive to give each other that respect, and to make sure that you're not allowing those distractions to allow for misinterpretation. So that's the first one. The second filter is emotional states, and we're going to go into this a little bit more when we do the how to deal with conflict. So our emotional states definitely filter what we hear and how we perceive that it's meant, and what our partner is trying to say to us, and also how we communicate with them. So when we're in a really great mood and, we hear something from them, and then that just only adds to it. But if we're really feeling off, if we're feeling stressed from work or the kids, the unpaid bills, whatever it is, and they say something, even if they didn't mean for it to be harsh, and you just like snap at them, that emotional state, you're just like, you immediately perceive it as just another problem or another thing that they're adding on your plate, right? So can you see how emotional states definitely filter the communication? So I'm going to go into some ways to deal with those different emotional states, because effective communication, it literally just cannot happen if you're in a really heightened negative emotional state. So that's not when we want to be having our big conversations. That's not when we want to get to the root of things and really solve problems and move forward. So these emotional states, they definitely filter the communication between the partners. Now, the third one is beliefs and expectations. And again, I said a lot of these come back from our childhood. Like we've been, I guess, like preconditioned. Our environment has taught us different things, that if this happens, it means this. But your partner, it could mean something completely different. So we give meaning to things, and often your partner does not have the same meaning. And so sometimes it's really effective to break it down and see, okay, when I say this, what do you expect? What does that mean to you? Right? And when I say this, this is what it means to me. Sometimes it's really just an issue of semantics, right? And the meaning and the beliefs that we put behind those things. And then, number 4 is our differences in style. We all have different ways of communicating. As you can tell, I use my hands a lot. I get very animated. That's just kind of my style of communicating. And then my husband is very mellow. He's very chill. We balance each other very, very well. But to me, sometimes that can come across as he's closed, or he is holding his emotions from me. I think sometimes he's being distant, when that's literally just his communication style. It has nothing to do with me, and I shouldn't be threatened by that. I just need to recognize that we all have different styles of communicating. We have different ways that we like to be communicated to, and ways that really turn us off. So me talking really fast and using my hands, I apologize if that offends you. But someone who speaks really slow and is really quiet, that's how they prefer to be communicated with. So understanding your partner's style and the way that they respond best will help you get there, right? And so just kind of, getting an understanding, a baseline understanding of the different styles of communication is really important. And that's something that we definitely help couples figure out. Then the 5th filter is self-protection. This is a big one. We don't communicate certain things because of fear of rejection. And this is definitely going on when you feel like you have your walls up, you've been hurt, you have had a lot of tension in the home, and you feel like no matter what you say, you're going to be criticized, or something negative is going to happen. And so you put up that self-protection. And so you're afraid to open up, and you don't want to feel vulnerable and talking about the sensitive subjects. And then in these kind of situations, any type of invalidation that you're giving your partner, if they are feeling closed up, or your partner is giving you, is going to be especially damaging and only lead to those walls being put up even more. Now, a tendency that we often see is that when one person has a wall up, the other person works really hard to try to get it down, right? And goes into a bit of panic mode because they're like, wow, they're withdrawn from me. They're really closed up. And so I need to fix this. I need to get to the root of it. I don't want them to be so closed up. And that kind of a little bit of aggressive mode coming at them, like demanding for them to open up, isn't necessarily the right way to do that. Okay. So we need to create productive ways of allowing them to feel safe expressing their needs, their desires, their wants, even their hurts at times, right? Those are difficult conversations, but they are the ones that move you forward. So let me know if you got those. And if you have any questions about anything I said. So those are the 5 filters. I'm just going to recap real quick. But they are distractions, emotional states, belief and expectations, differences in style, and self-protection. So if you have any of these filters going on when you are communicating, it is not going to lead to productive and effective communication. So keep that in mind. All right. Now, how to deal with conflict. I know that many of you and many people that we work with are expressing that a good amount of conflict is happening in your relationship. And so much so that you don't even feel like you can talk to each other safely. Almost every conversation is an argument. No matter what you say, you're wrong. And that they put you down, they belittle you, they bring up stuff from your past. Every little thing comes up during your conversations. And it's really difficult to be able to discuss what's going on in the relationship when you don't have that baseline of how to deal with conflict. So I'm going to go through a couple things like that. Again, we're going to go back to that emotional state, because when you're feeling a lot of, say you just got into a really big fight and you're just like in panic, or you're just so distraught, you're hurt, you're angry, you're so frustrated, this is not this time to continue the conversation. So rule number 1 when dealing with conflict is do not force conversation. Do not force it when you are in that really aggravated emotional state, or your partner is, okay? Now, I know some of you may have heard the advice to never go to bed angry. And for some people, they're able to work things out. However, I actually go against conventional wisdom there. And I say, do not try to force it into the late hours of the night when you are, again, we're going to talk about stress and emotional state, your physical state. If you're tired, you're exhausted, your emotions get worse, right? As the hours go later and later, your energy gets worse and worse. It's so much more easy to get upset and get angry. So what we recommend is you take a break and you allow for some space for you both to cool down and to get into a better state before coming back to it. That's what I call the waving the white flag peace agreement. You're going to say, we're just going to give each other space, and then you're going to set a time in the future. It could be in the morning or another time when it's really, you feel like it's going to be the most productive without the distractions, right? You'll be in a better emotional state where you can discuss it. And then you give yourself that time to cool down and kind of process things. Can you see how valuable that is? Instead of forcing it to happen right now, because sometimes we get into that panic mode and we feel like, I gotta fix this right now. Instead of doing that, giving it that space, allowing them to cool down. This was a challenging one for me originally in my marriage. I was one of those people that was like, I need to just get him to, we just need to fix this. Otherwise I can't think about anything else. I can't move forward until this is resolved. My husband naturally is one that wants to think about it and take his time and be really careful about things. And so I had to learn to respect that. And then I realized that it was a lot more beneficial for me as well to get some clear space. So what we want to do is we want to break your state, whatever emotional state you're in. There are a couple really important things you can do, but the first is, of course, take that deep breath. You've heard this, but how often are you actually doing it, right? So take that deep breath and take a couple deep breaths. What happens is that the deep breath hits your solar plexus. And your solar plexus is a bundle of nerves right under your abdomen that are connected to your entire body. And so when you're able to hit the solar plexus, it is able to relax and rejuvenate your entire body. That's a little brief example on what that science is, but taking a deep breath. Often change your physicality. You need to get up, you need to go outside, you need to go on a walk, anything that's going to kind of help you break state so that whatever you're in, if you're sitting down, stand up. If you're standing, sit down, lay down. And again, sleep is a beautiful, beautiful reset. In fact, it's like a reset every single day that we get, right? Where we just get to set it all down and then we get to start fresh again the next day. Anything else that helps you to really kind of simmer down, whether that's music, a bath, a walk, anything like that will help you. And then another thing that I really find helpful is to use Ho'oponopono. If you've never heard of Ho'oponopono, you might be like, what's this crazy lady saying? It is a Hawaiian healing prayer. And the ancient Hawaiians would use this, and it's simply stating these 4 phrases over and over again. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And you just repeat these again and again like a mantra in your mind, and you can say them to yourself for the things that you've done to cause hurt and to cause tension and your part in the conflict, and to recognize and take ownership of what your part is. And then also to send some of that love and that healing and that forgiveness and, your apology to them. And of course, saying those words out loud is even more powerful and even more healing. So use Ho'oponopono. That really helps break state. Instead of, I'm so mad at that person, my spouse, they just don't understand me. And, like replaying those words of your last fight over and over in your mind, to use Ho'oponopono and literally just focus on it like a laser. And as you do that, it will shift your energy. I promise you, it's awesome. Put it to the test. Okay, Diane says here, how do you get your husband to open up? I feel my husband just tells me what I want to hear. Okay, then this is definitely that defensive measure that we were talking about earlier, if you were able to be on at the beginning. But what we're talking about there is that he is probably feeling vulnerable. He doesn't want you to know that and doesn't want to talk about sensitive subjects. And so he very well may be telling you what you want to hear as a way to get you to stop the conversation and keep himself safe. So I would ask you, Diane, if there's anything you feel like has happened in your relationship to make him feel like he needs to close up. Now, if he's a little bit more like my husband, I don't know, because I obviously don't know anything more than what you just posted. But, naturally my husband is a little bit more on the quiet, reserved side. And that balances me really well because I'm very, open, and not very reserved. I'm very open about how I feel about everything. So, I had to learn his style as well and respect it. And then I had to learn how to communicate within his style. And that does take time. It takes some understanding and usually help from an outside perspective to know what that is. Because sometimes it just feels like, man, I'm talking to a brick wall. Like, I don't know how to get through to him. Everything I say just seems to bounce right back at me, right? I don't know if you feel that way, Diane, but let me know. And then you can learn these very important techniques on how to deal with people's different communication styles. And once you do, it's amazing. It's amazing when you learn how to kind of get through to that person who has a very different style than you, and they can then communicate with you too. It's just that, it's that beautiful, open, free communication that we really love and appreciate in marriage. We're able to talk about those sensitive things and feel like they're getting their needs met and we're getting our needs met. So that's what I recommend as far as that goes. Now, okay, so the first one is we're not going to force conversation when we're dealing with conflict. We're going to wait until we're both in a better place, and then we're going to come back to it. Okay, if at any time the emotions start to rise and get too heated, then you need to break. You need to break state, because in that state, this, like nothing productive happens. Okay, and you can't, it's almost like a train going this way, and you can't go this way with all of this energy and this momentum and this anger and have something really productive come out of it. It just simply doesn't happen. What you need to do is you need to stop the train. You need to calm it down, calm those brakes down, calm those engines down, and then slowly start to move it in the right way, where you can have effective dialogue. You can ask good questions that are leading you where you want to go. So, second tip, a rule, not a tip. These are not tips. These are rules, is to have patience with each other. I know that is often very, very difficult to do. But what you should expect is that if you're having a difficult conversation, and maybe this has been a pattern for a really, really long time, like years even, don't expect an immediate answer or a change right away. Okay. Sometimes we just want like that instant fix, like, oh, don't you see how hard I'm working on this? And I want you to respond immediately at level as what I am. But the truth is that they have those walls up, they have those protective barriers, and you have a conditioned response at that point, and it's going to take time. So be patient with them. Don't expect things to happen immediately. But what we've seen is that when you work on this, change can happen very quickly if you're doing it right, but don't expect it to happen right away, because it's taking you, weeks or years even to get to this point. It's going to take some time to reverse it and get the train going the way that you want it to. Now, the next thing is, the third rule is to listen with intent to understand and not to respond. So how many of you listen? I wouldn't even say listen, really, it's not really listening, but you're in a conversation and you're just waiting for them to end so you can jump on it and get your point across, right? And you're using it as ammunition almost. Well, instead of that kind of communication, what we want to do is when we're in a good state, right? We've come back to the conversation. We're listening to understand them. Okay? And the truth is that the way a person is feeling is true. It is true for that person. Now, they say, when you told me that I don't do enough around the house, that really bothered me and I feel hurt. Well, you might not have meant to hurt them, but the truth is they are hurting. And that's true to them. In their reality, in their world, they are hurt. And that's true. It's their reality, okay? So what we want to try to do is put ourselves in their shoes and understand why they're feeling the way that they're feeling. And then when I work with couples and they, when you said that I don't do enough around the house, that really bothered me. Okay, so I'm sorry that it bothered you when I said that. I wasn't trying to hurt you. And just that much of understanding and compassion, it just takes the energy down, like simmers everything down to a nice, really calm state. And then you can get to effective solutions, because maybe you feel like they aren't doing enough around the house. So that is a real issue. Okay, so this is the difference between right and being kind. Okay, you might be right. They might not be doing enough around the house. You might really need them to step up in that way. But the way that your partner is feeling is they're feeling hurt and angry and defensive. And so once you are able to resolve that, then you can work on the real issue, which is that you do actually need some help. And so then you can get into a conversation. I really need more. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I wasn't trying to put you down. I do recognize all the good that you do. But what I need is this. And then you can have that dialogue back and forth, if that makes sense. But when you're having this conversation, you listen with the intent to understand and not to just immediately respond. One thing I like to do is I kind of sit on my hands, because I talk with my hands, and I just listen, and I make myself sit on my hands so that I'm not talking, I'm listening, and I'm making sure that in my brain I'm listening and I'm trying to understand where he's coming from. And I know this has worked for other couples as well. So it's almost like, imagine that you have a mute button on yourself. You're going to mute your thoughts and you're going to mute your mouth. Okay, mute button. Zip the lips, and you're just going to listen with your heart to understand where they're coming from. Even if they're completely wrong, what they're wrong about feels true to them. And when you can understand why they feel that way, then you can do something about it. So the chat is a little bit quiet. I'm not sure if that's because you're just eating all this up or what. So let me know if this is resonating with you guys. All right. So then the next step, rule number 4, is do not take permanent action or make a decision when you are feeling those negative emotions. We're going back to state. It's almost all about state. But when you are in those negative emotions, do not ever take a permanent action. Okay, that's not the time. Like I said, as soon as you get into that state, you need to break state. You need to have that time to cool off, and never, ever, use words as threats or ammunition in that time, including the divorce word or separated, or I'm just going to leave you if you don't fix this. That is the most damage that you could possibly do in communication. So as soon as you feel that you're getting into a really negative state, or your spouse is, you're going to break state immediately. Then come back to it, and come back to it with an intent to listen and to understand. Can you see how much more valuable and productive that will be in your relationship? Yes, I'm hoping that someone put something in the chat, but I'm not going to make you, so that's okay. All right. And yeah, then that brings right to number 5. I actually said it, but never mention or threaten separation or divorce, ever. Okay. This sends the signal to your spouse that you're not committed, and it's only going to open up their fear, their insecurity, and lack of trust even more in the relationship. That is not what you want to do. It just produces more disconnection. And so if that has been a pattern in your relationship, then you need to fix it now. And I would encourage you to do that, and not to continue to let this fester, right? Now, the final thing is, when you feel like you are in a nice state again, is to have that physical contact and physical connection with a hug and eye contact during the conversation. Okay, Stephanie said, great advice. Sorry for the kids in the background. My husband's got them. I don't know if you can hear the toddler. Stephanie said, great advice. My husband and I always talk to prove our point, not to listen. Yes, Stephanie, and that's very, very common, and it's easy to do, especially when you feel defensive, if you feel hurt, and you just want to show them that you know something, right? Or that you are right in this. You can still show that you're right after you've given that understanding and that compassion. And then they might come around and see it. But always, what's more important than right is being happy. Would you rather be right? Like, I'm the queen of knowing everything in the world, but no one likes me because I'm never kind about it. Or would you rather be happy and kind? Maybe that was a silly example. But I hope I'm illustrating a point. There's just comes time where you can be right or you can be kind. You can be right or you can be happy. Sometimes you just can't be both. So you have to choose what is the bigger priority to you. And often ego gets in the way when we're always trying to be right. So letting that be, getting to that place of calmness and stillness within yourself, that's the work that I love to do, is helping people to develop that self-love, so that then you are able to give that love freely, and it's okay sometimes not to be right. It's actually a beautiful thing to kind of surrender that and have happiness still. It's a funny thing, but it actually works. So I hope that helps, Stephanie. Karina, lots of good insights. Okay, awesome. We both take things personally and are sensitive and emotional. Yeah. Any advice on how to ask for our needs without feeling like an insult? Very, very good. So if you are communicating and you feel like that example of, I need you to do more around the house, and then they get insulted, but then you're saying, I don't ever do anything good around the house. No, that's not what I meant, right? Okay. So that's kind of the discussions that we can get into. Why don't you ever do anything around the house? Please, I just need you to do this. Why can't you do it? Right? You know what I'm talking about. When we get into that kind of back and forth, feeling hurt instead of actually effectively working on our needs. So with that, when you're both sensitive and emotional, then it helps because you can actually I can't speak. Okay. Language. I'm sorry. Empathize. There we go. There it is. Empathize and understand each other. And you can even have a conversation about this. And if you need some guidance about it, then let me know. I'd be happy to guide you through that on how to deal with people that are both a little bit more sensitive and are easily insulted, even though you're trying to work on your needs. Because the bottom line is that you should be able to express your needs, and they should be able to express their needs, and have it be a non-issue almost, right? Because marriage is that give and take. And it's even more than that. When you get to the third level of love, which we'll talk about that in another life, and excuse me, I think I need some water. Hold on just a second. Okay, I've been a little bit sick, so excuse me. The third level is when you just do it out of pure love, right? You're just doing it because you purely love that person. So we can definitely work on that. All right. Okay, Diane said, my husband told me he wasn't in love with me and wanted to separate. Then he said he was sorry. He said it to hurt me. And now I don't trust him when he says he loves me. Okay, Diane. Well, this is actually, I think I'm going to just pull this out right here, that he said he was sorry and he said it to hurt you. That is really important, and that's really good awareness. that he admitted that. And that's exactly what we're talking about, using words as ammunition. You do not ever want to do that when you are in that really negative state, because it's so, so damaging. And you can see right now the effect of that. And it's illustrating to everyone else on here how the long-term effect of an in-the-moment response or reaction causes long-term damage and suffering, to the point where now you don't trust him when he says that he loves you. And I can almost promise you that he really does. I mean, I don't know your full situation, but I promise you that he probably really does love you, and he's working to rebuild that. But because of those harsh words said in that moment, that causes real, real hurt, like real down deep inside. And so what you need to do is you need to work on the forgiveness side, and you need to work on the communication so that you and he both have better communication. So when you're in those heated moments, you know what to do. And so I'd really encourage you to apply some of these things and see how they work, and then get some, outside intervention if you feel like it's only going to get worse, because usually it does if you don't fix it quick. Yeah, Stephanie, remember in that moment. Okay, awesome. So lastly, real quick, is that physical contact. I touched on this briefly and then I went to the chat. So definitely hug before you talk. Connect with each other. Let each other know that you still care about each other. And the best kind of hug, psychologically, physiologically, is a 10-second hug or more. I know it might sound a little bit strange, and you might be hugging each other like counting the seconds. I know I did when I first learned this principle years ago. But there is actually a powerful connection that happens with a long, sustained hug, an embrace, even a kiss. So hug before you go into the conversation. Let each other know that you care about each other and that you're here because you want this to work. It's so important. It's so vital. You want this conversation to be loving. And that's the only kind of conversation that we should have, right? So that's the goal, is to have every conversation be as loving, as kind, understanding, compassionate, and effective as possible, okay? Because every relationship has those holes. Every relationship has those little kinks that need to be fixed up, worked out. And so you need to be able to express those in a really safe environment, and know that it's safe for you to share those things, and it's safe for your partner to share them with you as well. So remember that in the moment. Remember that it's about being happy, not about being right. Yep. Alrighty. Well, if anyone else has one more thing in the chat, let me know. Otherwise, I need to go get my kiddos ready for bed. Okay. So yeah, I hope that you can see that there's value in dealing with conflict and communication this way. Can you see that? Can you see what a difference it is? There's just a few things. They're powerful shifts. When you apply them, they will get you communicating in ways that feel freeing, you're able to be vulnerable, and be able to feel like your partner understands and respects you, and you understand and respect them. Understand, if you have been in a negative cycle of communication for a long time, it's going to take some time. So again, have that patience with your partner as they catch up to speed, but they will respond almost, 95% of the time. They will respond, even if things seem completely dire right now. Mark and I have seen absolute miracles happen in relationships, working, with them in this way so that they can get communicating again. And some of them were separated, weren't communicating at all, and so able to get that communication established again in a productive, forward-moving manner that just feels yummy. I say it feels yummy. So put some of these things to the test, and then let me know how you do. I'd love that. That's my homework assignment to you, is to try at least one of these, whatever it was, whether it was avoiding any of those filters, right? Or making sure that you're in a peak state, breaking state, making sure you don't use harsh language or make decisive actions during those negative, moments. And then always communicating with the intent to understand, not to respond. Awesome. Yeah, you're very welcome, Stephanie. So this is all great information, and I'm very happy to serve you from that. But if you are ready to make a truly radical change in your relationship, then please reach out to Mark or I. We would be happy to help you to end the cycle of suffering or the pain, the ineffective communication. You and your partner might have completely different communicating styles, or you just might be unable to see how to get through these things. That's the work that we do. We've helped many clients over the years in very similar situations to yours. And what we have found is that it doesn't take years in therapy or counseling to change a marriage. In fact, We have a proven system that can do it in a matter of weeks, and it works. And it is wonderful to see couples now on the other side of it. And so we have opened up some spots. We are starting our next workshop next week. And so we have 10 open spots. We have already filled a number of them the last few days. And so they're going fast, but we are offering that to you guys. And it is at a discounted rate from our normal rate because we're trying out a couple new things that we feel like are going to add even more value to our program. So if you are interested in that, then please let Mark and I know, because I honestly, I'm going to say this with love and compassion and caring, but it's bold. There's a penalty for living in pain. And a lot of us, we stay there way too long sometimes. So it's time to end the suffering and get you guys going in the right path. So I love you all. I'm appreciative of you. I send much love to you. Okay, Zachary, sorry, I just saw this came in. I asked my wife accusing questions because I'm very sensitive and really vulnerable to get. I'm pushing her away. What is your advice? Okay. Yeah, Zachary, I'd love to help you with that real quick. And again, maybe we should jump on a call and I can get the full picture. That's the best way, is for us to chat one-on-one. So anyone else who feels like they would benefit from a call where I can, do a deep dive, get you clarity on what's going on in your specific situation, because everyone is so different. Like I said, this is really a high level view, like a 30,000 foot view on how to fix these things. And sometimes you just need to take that deep dive and really understand what's going on, what the root of these things are. But Zachary, I would ask you, why are you feeling so sensitive and vulnerable? Okay. Why do you feel like you're pushing her away? And once you understand what it is, was there something that she did to break your trust? Have you always felt that way? Okay. These are some of the questions that we can help you with. And once you can identify what it is, why you're feeling that you're putting up walls around her, then we can address how to allow yourself to feel vulnerable and how to feel safe, what she can do in her communication to let you know that it's okay. And then, for you to, maybe let go of some of those accusing questions. I'd like to get to the root of why you feel like you need to ask her those accusing questions. So, are you afraid that she's going to have an affair? Has there been a past infidelity? Is there any reason why you feel like that's the way you need to communicate with her? Once we can get to the root of that, then I can better help you answer that question. Then we can know how to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to feel safe with her, to know that you can trust her and she can trust you. And it goes back and forth that way. So I have to run. I'm sorry, I don't have any more time. I have to get my kiddos to bed. But again, thank you. And Zachary or anyone else, Diane, Stephanie, I appreciate you guys all for coming on the chat. Karina, if any of you need help with this in a deeper way and you're ready to transform your relationship, then please let Mark and I know. And you guys have a fantastic night. All right. Thanks, guys.